Actually, the year that everyone thought I was going to go on at 23, I didn't actually get on, and I was absolutely gutted because I felt in the back of my mind, I was thinking, well, there's one gap coming up now at the end of the year. I've been going well up until this. They should put me on, but that's where I went wrong. Thinking, it's to get an international badge is not a given to anyone. So that there was a steep learning year for me between the ages of 22 and 23.
Right then, hello folks, welcome to episode 19 of Referees, the Final Whistle podcast with Ant, Martin and Nathan, and today's guest is again a little bit of refereeing royalty for you. His name is Richard Storey. Currently, he's refereeing in the Republic of Ireland, but if you've heard of him before, it's probably because he made it onto the FIFA Assistant Referees Panel during his time in Northern Ireland. Rich, welcome to the podcast. Tell us a little bit about your journey and how you got onto that FIFA panel.
Oh, thanks very much for having me on, folks. Probably just come on and speak. Yeah, so I started refereeing when I was 16 years of age. I'm 34 now. Done a little bit of refereeing in Northern Ireland, but quickly seen that there was opportunities available on the assistant side of it. So I decided to go down that route. So at the tender age of 18 or 19, I think it was, I went on to the Irish Premier League as an assistant referee. Mm-hmm. And I spent then right up until I was 24. Then I was nominated onto the FIFA list in 2011. And done 9 years on the international panel. Was receiving appointments before I went on in Europe, so thankfully I was happy with that. I've done 56 matches in Europe and thoroughly enjoyed my time. Had a lot of good games, done 6 Europa League group stage matches, done the last 32 game, done a number of internationals in terms of World Cup qualifying games, European Championship games, and yeah, enjoyed the journey. Met lots of people, done a lot of really, really good matches, and yeah, looking forward now going down the refereeing side of it. I'm looking forward to a new challenge in Ireland, in the Republic of Ireland. So I've done probably 16 good years as an assistant. I'm ready now to go down the middle route, and I'm really looking forward to that challenge.
You said you made the panel at 24.
Yeah.
That's phenomenal. As a 24-year-old, that's like a baby in the refereeing world, in the officiating world. Did you feel like any extra pressure from anyone going, look at the young lad, FIFA list, what's going on here? Or was you like, nah, I'm flying, check me out?
No, it's funny you should say that, Ant, actually. The age that you can go on the list as an assistant is 23, as a referee is 25. I was receiving appointments in Europe from the age of 21, which is unheard of, probably. It was unheard of back then anyway. And yeah, I was always going out under the impression of, I'm a lot younger than these guys, I have to impress. But in saying that, there was a lot of learning at such a young age. I'm confident, but don't believe that I'm arrogant, but I'm confident. But I maybe got a wee bit complacent between the ages of 22 and 23, because there was a gap in Northern Ireland. There was an extra badge available, and there was a lot of people telling me, "Well, you're going to go on. You're a cert, definitely going to happen." But see, that year before I turned 23, that was probably my worst year in terms of my performances. Not that I wasn't doing any less work. It was probably because people were telling it to me from all angles, and I was putting too much pressure on myself, maybe. And actually, the year that everyone thought I was going to go on at 23, I didn't actually get on, and I was absolutely gutted because I felt in the back of my mind, I was thinking, well, there's one gap coming up now at the end of the year. I've been going well up until this. They should put me on. But that's where I went wrong, thinking, it's to get an international badge is not a given to anyone. So that year was a steep learning year for me between the ages of 22 and 23. We went on a training camp with the Irish FA to Holland, to the football headquarters in Holland. And I remember it well. One of our old school observers took me to the side and gave me a real dressing down. Was really honest with me. And at a young age, I was absolutely, it was actually after an evening meal and everyone was relaxing and I was that torn apart that I went to my bed and I didn't want to see anybody. And I was gutted and I was thinking to myself, when I go home, that's me finished. I'm going to give up. I was going through all that I was at such a low. And then funny what's it, the next morning we had obviously we were getting up, we were doing things. Jaap Muhlenberg from Holland came in to give us a talk. And instead of giving us a talk, he put on, do you know the movie Kill the Referee?
Yeah.
He put on that and that motivated me. In a strange sort of way, this might sound stupid, seeing them guys at the Euros and thinking, that's international level. I want that. I want a wee piece of that. Maybe not at that level, but as high as I can possibly go. So for me, the night before, thinking I want to give up, I was now thinking, you know what? I'm going to prove these guys wrong. I can do it. And the observer that gave me the dressing down, he later told me that was the response he wanted from me. That's why he was doing it. He wasn't doing it to be mean, to be hateful, or to be anything else. He was doing it because he knew, in his words, he knew I was a strong enough character to bounce back from that and say, I'm going to prove these guys wrong. And that observer, that was on the January or February of that year, and that observer phoned me in October of the same year to tell me I was being nominated. And he was the one that was most pleased for me. So it had the effect on his part. But yeah, going on at 24, sorry to go away from the question there, it is extremely young, especially back in the early 2011. It's most guys were late 20s, early 30s, at least, before they got onto the FIFA list. So it probably helped me from starting at such a young age. And I did put the work in, trained, done everything, that's crossed my T's and dotted my I's, and thankfully was fortunate enough to get that opportunity. So
obviously you just mentioned it there, you had a big sort of dressing down, but it was done with love, I suppose, to try and get you to do better, because obviously they saw the potential in you. But and obviously just before we started recording here, we talked a little bit about some of the mentors that you had, which I think probably you want to mention. And I want to know, what kind of support did you have coming through? Did you particularly when you talked about maybe getting bigger ideas when you were 21, 22 and trying to deal with that, particularly from a sort of psychological perspective, what kind of support did you have within the Irish FA that really probably helped you to get to where you are? Obviously talking about the 50 plus international games that you eventually ended up doing. Yeah,
no, don't get me wrong, the support was very good. I think as the years go on, the sport gets better because people are learning from all angles, whether it be psychological help, whether it be help with your fitness, whether it be help with your general refereeing. But back then, yes, there was development groups within each divisional association. So they were extremely useful. And then when you got to national level, the best support I would say would probably from your colleagues. The guys that have been there, 10 years, 15 years, the older guys in the panel and the more experienced guys, they were, all the development groups in the world are brilliant. But I think the most valuable advice and experience and learning you'll get is speaking to them guys, speaking to them through games, speaking to them after matches. If something goes wrong, don't bury your head in the sand, lift the phone, ask for advice. Don't be in denial. Maybe at a certain stage of your career, everyone's done it. You've made a mistake and you're trying to talk yourself out of it. You're trying to, for example, if you make an offside call that's wrong, clearly wrong, you're trying to find a reason to make it right. And we've all done it. Don't do that. That'll be my advice to younger referees coming through. Realise you've got it wrong and think, how am I going to get this right the next time? So, yeah, to answer your question, Nathan, colleagues probably were the best help, especially me coming up at such a young age, because I was at that stage. There's a lot more now, younger guys. But at that stage, I was I was the youngest on the whole panel of even at national level, and the youngest by a good bit. So chat to the older guys, get the experience off them, learn from them.
I think it's a running theme, and I think Martin and Ant will agree with me. It's a running theme that we talked about in the last episode about working with certain colleagues as you come through, particularly within the English system, where you can be dualing and be an assistant on one league and be a referee on another league, and actually learning from the people you're with. And we had a conversation about comms and things like that. So I think that's very much a consistent theme that we're seeing when we're talking to sort of expert referees like yourself, that really one of the biggest things is actually learning from your colleagues. And I think that, you know, when you first come onto a supply league in England, you could quite easily have that where you start as maybe a level 7 or a level 6 and you're working with a level 4 or a level 3 and trying to, the message that I suppose we're all trying to put across is try and take as much as you can from them, because it seems like, you know, top guys on FIFA and international level are saying, you know, it's got to be the right way forward.
Absolutely. And not only that there too, you can actually learn from guys who maybe aren't at the same level as you in terms of being a lower level than you. Yeah. You can learn from everybody, you know, have an open mind, you know, look at, you know, I love going out, not so much now, obviously I can't with the COVID situation, but I love going out and watching local games, and I try and pick up some wee thing from the referee. And, you know, you will always find something, some wee small thing, and it will improve you as a referee.
Yeah, it's interesting because one of the things we were talking before we started recording this is about, you know, a little nation in inverted commas of Northern Ireland, you know, smashing it on the European stage like you were with your team. And I think it's great credit to be able to go out there and hold your own like you have. And I know we've had people like Alan Snoddy, who I know has been a big influence on you. Someone that us three really admire Alan and what he's achieved. And one of the things that struck me is when you're going to your normal run-of-the-mill games at home in Northern Ireland, you're not going to get the attendances that you get at these games that you're going to see in Europe. How did you find the acclimatization to that?
Don't get me wrong, it was difficult to begin with. Yeah, as you said, we were from a small nation, and we were holding our own at a quite high level in Europe. But I'm going to say now, without sounding too confident, we felt at the time we were every bit as good as the English referees, as a German referee team, as an Italian referee team, and that might sound ridiculous to some people, but how are the guys from Northern Ireland every bit as good? We were we are part-time referees. I work a full-time job. I train 5 times a week. I study my laws of the game. I do every bit as much work, I believe, as a full-time referee does. And we were there on merit. So we just have, you know, the English referees have probably the best product in the world in terms of the Premier League. We had our Premier League. Our Premier League, in our eyes, is the best league in the world. Mightn't be as high a level, but a game of football is a game of football. If you put the same work and the same effort into it, that's why I'm saying, without sounding too, hopefully not sounding too arrogant, that we felt we were every bit as good as the bigger nation referees.
Well, it's interesting because when we had Clattenburg on, Mark Clattenburg, is one of the things he touched on is exactly what you just said. And he said, Clat said, you know, I might come across as arrogant, but I'm confident. I believe in my ability, and I think you've got to. We said you got to own your mistakes. You got to own what you win. You own your bonuses. You own the appointments. And I think I've seen it. We've seen the quality of what you've produced in the team you were with, and I think you've got to have a bit of that. And Clat's touched on it about, you know, if you haven't got a little bit about you, these players are going to eat you up. They're just going to eat you up, and it's a good balance. And I think you're doing yourself a disservice there. I think you're more than capable, and you're more than you know. Sorry,
I'm just realised I didn't actually answer your question. Your question was, how did they go from doing a game in front of 2,000 of them right to a game in front of 50,000? Do you know what? It was, in a strange sort of way, maybe easier in front of 50,000 than it was 2,000 or 200 or 500. Because you can hear specific comments from the crowd of 200 or 500, whereas you just hear a big noise. And you know what? Seeing the whistle goes, you're not focused in the match. you don't really hear anything. You enjoy the whole, seeing the big games, the big games, every game's a big game, sorry. But I mean, European games and big stadiums in front of 30, 40, 50,000 people. You enjoy the whole pre-match and post-match, and you can see the media presence, and you just know it's a big deal. But you see when the whistle blows, first whistle blows, it's any other game of football. You do what you do at home. You do what you do. You do what you have been doing for years leading up to that. So possibly easier. Pressure might have been a bit greater, but in terms of the actual moment, possibly easier in front of a bigger crowd than a smaller crowd.
Can I supplement the question that Martin's just asked there? Because I'm interested to know about when you go to a big, you talk about big crowds, you go to a big place. I'm assuming that, obviously you were working with Arnold when he was struck by a missile in was it Romania? And I want to know kind of what was going through your mind at that stage when obviously that happened and you're in a big crowd. It's obviously a hostile atmosphere. How did you deal with that, and what was the kind of mindset around that?
I actually wasn't on that game, Nathan. You see, we were predominantly on a team throughout the journey in terms of on Arnie's climb up to Cat 1. In terms of all Europa League games, like I done probably 95% of my matches with Arnold Hunter. But then unfortunately Arnold got demoted to Cat 2. And when that happened, then the team was sort of split a wee bit. So I was sent to work with another referee, as was maybe the other assistant. And so things that was actually, there was a new, who's now a FIFA referee from Northern Ireland, Jamie Robinson. He was fourth official, but he wasn't FIFA at the time that happened to Arnold. And there was an experienced assistant referee, but the other assistant referee was fairly new on the international panel. So having spoken to the boys, it was an extremely difficult situation. The police actually in Romania had told the team of referees, by what I'm told, they told the UEFA delegate, this game doesn't finish, there's going to be big riots. So the team of referees were put under immense pressure to finish that game. Thankfully that happened. It wasn't a good thing, but it was never a good time for that to happen, but it happened with only a minute or two to spare in the match. So Jamie Robinson done very well to go on and get that game finished. So he did.
That's mad that the police are like, yeah, no, you don't have the choice to abandon the game. That's mad. Obviously they did have the choice to abandon it, but to say these are the repercussions guaranteed if you decide to abandon the game, that, like you say, that amount of pressure on those officials. Wow. See,
the atmosphere, we talked about atmosphere earlier on. The atmosphere in Eastern Europe, for example, a lot of Eastern European countries, I loved because it was really, really intense. Completely different atmosphere to what you might get in Ireland, England, France, the western part of Europe. It was just madness. The stadiums looked like they're on fire. You have the whole place bouncing. It's just life or death over there to the fans. And it's brilliant. It's good when something like unfortunately what happened in Ireland doesn't happen. It's good in terms of you come away with such a buzz after. Refereeing that environment, and it's great.
In terms of walking into that environment as a match official, I know that you can't let it intimidate you and put anything up you in terms of a bias or anything like that. But surely there was something there. You walk into that and it is a cauldron of potentially hostile energy. Is there something
You're only human. I would say, see, pre-match, you're going into the whole. See, when you're checking your pitch and you're walking into the stadium, right, and you're trying to show. We talked about confidence earlier on. You're trying to show ultimate confidence. You're walking around that pitch with your head high and your shoulders out, like you are the man. If that makes sense. That's not to be arrogant. That's to be, I'm in control before the game even starts. So you're actually trying to put on, and maybe an act as such, in terms of, you're capable of the job, but you have to show that wee bit extra in certain stadiums, in certain places in the world, to show that, you're ready for this. See, when the whistle goes, it is absolutely no bearing. absolutely no parent. You hear noises and of course you hear, you're going to hear things, but you're 100%. It's hard to describe the amount of focus you have in such a high, intense game that you may have to give 3 penalties against the home side later on in the match. You may have to give disallow a goal for offside that could have won the game for the home match in the very last minute. If that's what you have to do, that's what you have to do all day long, because that's what you're there employed to do.
And we were talking also about you did one of the biggest games that's gone on in Ireland for a long time, and you did a friendly in Dublin with Ireland against England. What an event that must have been.
I did, and I was saying that game sort of came out of chance. I got married in 2015, so I was actually on the honeymoon. It was May, and we had received a European appointment in the European Championship qualifiers for the beginning of June in the Ukraine. But our league in Northern Ireland had stopped 4 or 5 weeks previous to that. So what happens quite regularly between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland is, because in the Republic of Ireland there's a summer league, and in the Northern Ireland there's a winter league, for European matches we might give each other a game to warm up for the European game. So, cut a long story short, we asked the FA in the Republic of Ireland for a match to warm us up for going out to the Ukraine. And we were actually down to do a game in the second tier in the Republic of Ireland, in the west of Ireland, in Galway, on the Friday night. Now, I was due to come home from honeymoon on the Thursday. So I was thinking, well, I'm going to be tired for this one. And it's it's away out in the middle of nowhere. It's probably 3 hours away from us, 3.5 hours away, and we're thinking, right, okay, we need a match, but we'll have to do it. But anyway, Arnold, he phoned me on the day before I was due to come home from honeymoon. He says, we're not going to Galway now. We have a match in Dublin on Sunday, but we'll have to go down on Saturday night. And I went, right, okay. And I says, who is it? And he says, can't tell you, because there's going to be a press release very soon and I can't tell anybody. I've been strictly told not to tell anybody. I said, come on, Arnie, who is it? And he wouldn't tell me. So I got off the phone and got on to Google games in Dublin on Sunday, because it didn't dawn on me. There's no way that match, we're referees from Northern Ireland. I thought we wouldn't have been allowed to do that match, but it was a friendly fixture. I was thinking games in Dublin on Sunday, and I was starting to think, why do I have to go down the Saturday night? Because Dublin's only 2 hours down the road. So then the only game that was coming up was Republic of Ireland and England. And I was thinking, no way. So I text him, is it the Republic of Ireland and England? Text him back, don't say a word. So I was in cloud nine. I was in the middle of a casino in Las Vegas. That was our last stop on honeymoon. And I was thinking, God, this is brilliant. I'm going to be doing this. So I hit myself for the last few hours. I was in Vegas, and I got home on Friday. We went down on Saturday evening, and that whole experience was just surreal. For the simple reason is the whole spectacle of it was the first time England were back in Dublin since the whole troubles in the 90s, and the media there was insane. It was more than I had ever seen any game. We were staying in a hotel, and I come out of my hotel room, and out of the next the next room beside me, Paul Scholes walked out of, and he was working for ITV on the match, and I was seeing, just going down to the hotel lobby, and I was seeing, God rest him, Jack Charlton, and guys that got there and thinking this is a big deal, and really enjoyed the whole pre-match. Walking out onto the pitch. I'm going to tell a wee story before that. Went to get the teams out for their pre-match check in the tunnel a few minutes beforehand. So I went to the Republic of Ireland team, and Roy Keane gave me a serious mouthful in terms of get out. And I was a big Man United fan growing up, and he was my idol, and I thought this was great. It's the only time I ever thought, brilliant, Roy Keane. I didn't care what he said to me. And actually, Martin O'Neill made a joke of me saying, it's all right, he speaks to all us Northerners like that, And then, it was just surreal. And then we walked the teams out, and the whole pre-match was, they brought the president of Ireland out to introduce everyone. And I looked at one side and seen Wayne Rooney, and I looked at the other side and seen John O'Shea. And these are guys you're watching a match today every Saturday night. And you're thinking, normally when you go out, I have done a lot of really big games previous to that, but you're going out to do teams in Russia and teams, and you're not seeing the players as regularly. Yeah. But these are guys that you've seen week in, week out on the TV, and you're thinking, I wasn't starstruck because you knew I had a job to do, but I was thinking, this is brilliant. I'm going And then I remember during the game, a flag being really off for offside, and it was, and again, me, an ex-United fan, and I'm thinking, this is, but thankfully the game went without problems. It was actually quite a drab game. It was, after it all, it was 0-0. But in saying that, it didn't take away from the memories. And another good thing, Dermot Gallagher spent his whole time with us, because I'm sure you know, he's a big Republic of Ireland fan, actually. And he spent his whole time with us. And I have a funny story. I don't know whether I should tell or not, but I'm going to. After the match, there was a few. We were driving up the road home. We were going to drive up the road home. We went for a meal after the game with our liaison officer, who's Paddy Daly from the south, who were well known in the refereeing circles all across the world, and Dermot Gallagher. And they had a few Guinnesses with their meal. And after the match, we were driving, and Paddy says, "Would you mind leaving me off at home and Dermot off at his brother's house, because his brother lives in Dublin?" So we're like, "Yeah, no problem at all." And so you can picture the scene. We drove to, what was it, a wee Honda Civic. Yeah. So Aaron and Gareth, the other assistant, in the front seat, and me dropped in the middle of Dermot Gallagher and Paddy Daly in the back seat. So we got Paddy dropped off, and Paddy says to Dermot, "Are you sure you know where you're going now? He said, you've been here a few times, you know how to get to your brothers?" "Oh, no problem, 100%. Each of them had a few pints in them." Like. And then, so Dermot starts to direct us, take a left, take a right, and we realise, hold on a second, there's Tolka Park again. We've been past that 3 times, and we pretty quickly realise he doesn't have a clue where he's going here. And the next minute, we stopped the guards, which is the police in the south of Ireland, to ask for directions. And the guard officer came over and picked his head into the window. "Oh, look, it's Dermot Gallagher." Calls his mate over. We took Dermot Gallagher, has to get out of the car for selfies and with the police. And you're thinking, this is maybe at 11 o'clock at night, but it was great crack. It was great fun, and things that got there, and we eventually got Dermot back to his brother's house. That whole experience, Martin, was fantastic, and it's one that will live in my memory for a long time.
Yeah, because Clatts again, he talked about the challenges of that. Of having to manage people that are multimillionaires, very well known, that does come with its challenges. No matter what sort of person you are, it's a challenge and a half, mate.
Yeah, absolutely. There is. You have to, and you've different characters, obviously, on the pitch, and as I say, you've multimillionaires on the pitch that you're refereeing. But at the same time, I think we're all trained to put that in the back of your mind where possible. There's ways of managing them, but put it back in your mind in terms of you have to make a decision against them. You make a decision against them. And it doesn't matter if they're a player on 250 grand a week against a player on 500 pound a week. It doesn't matter. That doesn't matter in a referee's head. A referee has to be impartial. But yeah, Cass is right, absolutely right. It's finding a way to manage each individual is a skill in itself.
What did you hear over the headphones? Like that helps you as a referee. Internationally, we've said about as you climb the ladder, I always felt that, when you're a line-out and you listen off the ref and you learn, you bring little things, little nuggets, and you get acclimatized to it. On the international stage, that's just another level again, isn't it? To help you as a
people. Absolutely. No, you learn a lot. And I always tell people who are dead set against lining, give it a try for a while, because you will learn so much in terms of your refereeing by being on the line. You'll pick so much up from different referees. But yeah, you hear all sorts, especially in the Irish League. You hear all sorts of ways of management, different referees, different personalities. You'll have a referee that is laid back and won't say too much, and then you'll have another referee that might be, best word to describe, industrial. Sometimes it works for certain referees, but sometimes it doesn't. But yeah, you learn so much, Martin. On the European level, it's sometimes hard to hear.
Yeah,
you have to be really clear, and we would always say repeat. So you'd say everything 3 times. So if you were given an offside decision on the line, you're going offside, and you're saying it as clearly as you can. But you have to keep it to a minimal with communication. Too much is mumble jumble.
Yeah, we have a similar problem with Martin on the podcast.
Exactly. I'm going to say it 3 times, going to record it, bleeding 3 times. One of the things that jumped out at me as you were talking, and if I'm putting you on the spot, then we'll cut it out. But there was a famous clip of an Irish referee going, "Calm the fuck down."
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you know him? It was the score.
Yeah, I know him well. I've worked with him on many occasions. Andrew Davey, he's a top lad.
He looks a top lad. He looks a top lad.
You know what?
Put him in touch with him. Put us in touch with him. I'd love to have him on.
I will. No problem. No, he's, to be honest with you, I've been lying to myself otherwise. That's probably mild for some. There's 1 or 2 referees in particular that if you heard them referee, you'd think. But again, that's their style. I personally wouldn't advise it in terms of younger referees coming through. Wouldn't advise using swear words or using, because I feel you're setting yourself up. But for 1 or 2 referees over here, it works for them. I have to be honest. There's one guy in particular, and he commands full respect by every player on that pitch every time he goes out, and he is as industrial as they come. Mm-hmm. So it works for some people, but I personally wouldn't advise it. So, don't know. That's me sitting on the fence a wee bit, but
that's another theme that keeps cropping up on the podcast as well. Is referees who make naughty words on the field of play. And obviously we say the same thing. Yeah, I wouldn't lead with it. I wouldn't say, right, I've just qualified, fuck you. But if you've been doing it a few years, give it a go. Yeah. See if it works for you.
No, I think we alluded to it right at the beginning of the piece here, and obviously we've just been talking about referees and the way that referees talk and the way that referees go about the business. And my question to you probably now is new, really exciting project. We talked about it just before we came on about the new League of Ireland season starting in March, and you must be really looking forward to that. But obviously we talked about how hard you worked. You know, you're saying you're almost a full-time referee in terms of the way you train and work. In the way that you've trained and work, how much has that changed since you've gone from being an assistant to being a referee in terms of your mindset around training, preparing for games, all of these things? And obviously you must have learned a lot from the likes of Arnold and others that you work with as you got ready for this position, and maybe even spoken to them about making this change. And so I'm kind of just interested to understand how things have changed for you now you view yourself as the man in the middle.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm actually surprised in what I'm about to say in terms of types of training has changed massively. Now, initially I had applied to do the transfer back in, I think it was June last year, and I haven't got the chance to get into the League of Ireland yet. I've done a couple of youth games for COVID reasons. I'm getting myself in terms of work. I've done a lot. I've still done probably 4 or 5 sessions a week in terms of fitness as an assistant.
Yeah.
But were they the same types of sessions as I'm doing now? Absolutely not. One thing I was never very good at, which I should have been, was strength training. So I've started doing quite a bit, but not quite a bit. I've started applying more strength training into my routine, and my high intensity sessions are even higher. In terms of what, because, as an assistant, you shouldn't be saying this because I thankfully never thought like that throughout my career. You need to be very sharp off your feet in terms of very quick, but in terms of your
stamina
levels is what I was looking for. Probably you don't need to be as high as what they do for a referee, because a referee covers double the amount of ground. Yeah. So I am in the frame of mind now where whenever I get started in the League of Ireland, which I'm very excited about, once I get past my fitness test, which is hopefully in a couple of weeks. It was supposed to be last week, but was put back because of COVID, obviously. Mm-hmm. I don't want to be caught out in my fitness.
Yeah.
If after 3-4 months' time, if people come to me and say you're a bad referee because you can't recognise fouls, which hopefully they don't do either, that's fair enough. But if they come to me and say you're not good enough because of your fitness, I will kick myself, and I don't want to be that person. So I'm trying to get myself now ready to the optimal level of fitness. So I have upped my fitness training slightly. Mm-hmm. Like I'm coming in here, I have 2 young children. I work 40 hours a week as a butcher. I have 2 young children. I have a 3-month-old girl and a 3-year-old boy. And I'm coming in a few evenings a week when I'm doing the training. I'm coming in and getting them down, I'm getting them to bed, I'm getting them fed, I'm getting them changed. And I'm going out training, or I'm going to do a strength training or weight training in the living room, or I'm going to out to the shed to the treadmill at maybe 11:30 at night. And I'm doing a full hour. You have to find the time. So I'm putting the effort in because I don't want to be caught out. And I'm really excited because my time in Northern Ireland was fantastic. The games that I got in Europe and my journey, I couldn't have asked for any more. But this is a new chapter now. Yeah. That was in the lining. I'm now getting a chance in the middles, and I'm really excited about the future. So I want to be as prepared as I can be going into it.
Yeah. And mentally, and in terms of your preparation for refereeing games of sort of all the angles and everything that goes into that kind of thing,
Yeah, no, that's things that you would have picked up, and you'd be surprised in matches. Assistants actually help referees with that. Yeah. You don't realise it. Once you get, obviously, out of advice at the start, especially when people start using communication systems, get the basics right. Get your fouls and communicate the basics. But once you've been working in the team for a number of years, if I'm seeing the referee is running too central down the pitch, I'm getting in his ear. Get left, get left, get left. So I would argue assistants know as much about positioning for a referee as a referee does. Yeah. Because I've been there in every single changing room that Arnie's been there after every match that he's done, or any other referee. And I've listened to the advice that he's getting, not only the advice that I'm getting. Yeah. And I took it on board, not because I was thinking about my future, but because I was thinking at that time, I'm going to listen because I want to be another set of ears for him in case he's missed anything. And I want to help him going forward. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Definitely. And I think that's one of the things that, obviously, I think one of the things I always laugh at when I started as well with referees at higher level was always about the way you manage players, because the referee would say, I can run away and you can't. And I think that's must be one of the key considerations for you when it comes to management. I'm sure you've been surrounded after a tight offside or whatever it's been before, but I think the way you're going to manage players now must make it's going to be completely different.
I don't. That side of it now, hopefully I'll not be caught out, but that side of it doesn't worry me, because I'm confident that I have the management skills, the mentality to deal with that. That there, now I'm saying that it will always be, you always think about it, and you always think, we silly things. I do a lot of imagery in my mind leading up to a match. If something happens and I have to call these 2 guys over, and this is a couple of days before the match, I'm thinking like this. Right, what am I going to say to these guys? What am I going to say to players? Because you have to be very careful what you say. Because Mark Dattenberg alluded to in the podcast you did with him about the whistle. The whistle can have a lot of effect. Your voice can too, in my opinion. So I'd be thinking of every single wee scenario that could possibly come up. Now, you might not get everyone, and I'd be thinking, right, what happens if I get a mass brawl? Right. So you're thinking maybe you get your 3 different viewing angles. You're telling your assistants to get your different viewing angles. But also you're saying, right, what happens if there is wee small thing, a bit of pushing and shoving in the penalty area before a corner's coming in? When I'm pulling them guys out, what am I going to say to them? Yeah. So you're trying your best to prepare for that as well as you are for the physical side of it.
And the biggest question that I know that Martin and Ant will be desperate for me to ask is, have you decided what colour whistle you're going to use yet?
Black all day long.
Oh, fuck off. Brilliant. I guarantee you, right, you did the same thing to Clattenburg as well. I bet you've stitched me up again. You have. You have. I've been stitched up again.
I don't know he's on us.
I have to be honest. I do own a nice neon yellow one, but I will never use it.
Why not? What a waste of a brilliantly coloured whistle.
Listen, I've got a better question, right? What's the best way to cook a steak? You're a butcher. I know you're a chef.
Yeah, go on. Actually, go on.
Come on, best way to cook a steak?
Anything more than medium and you're destroying it.
Amen to that. Absolutely amen.
Anything more than medium, you're destroying it. Depends on the size. Hot pan, 3 minutes either side, perfect.
Brilliant. And would you do what Rocky did and like hang up a carcass and like punch it when you're training and stuff?
Get the strength training
swinging back and knocking me out.
That is brilliant. And your brother's a referee, and your brother did really well on a scene as well.
Yeah, he was. Again, that was another highlight of my journey as well. He's younger than me, and he was coming through as a referee. I got him into it, obviously, and he took a wee head swagger when he got onto the Premier League as an assistant. I think he done 1 year, and then he took a wee head swagger of going and playing again. And he was never going to make it as a player, but thankfully then that only lasted about a year, and he came back on, and he was able to get back onto the assistant list in Premier League level. And first appointment with him in Europe was a special moment. Like it was. We went to Malta. Now it was quite nice because the way the flights worked out, it was during, when was it? 2014. It was the World Cup was on. And the way the flights worked out, we were there like 3 days before the match. So we were a week in Malta with one game.
Oh, wow.
I would always say, be professional, 100% professional at the job you have to do, but also enjoy yourself. Because you have to enjoy yourself. We're here, I'm refereeing in Northern Ireland because I enjoy it. It's not a profession for me, I wish it was, but I'm refereeing because I enjoy it. So whenever I got them trips, I made sure to enjoy them. Now, I always put the match first, always done everything I had to do. But when I got a chance, laying out in the sunbed in Malta after a game, why not?
Cracking advice. Absolutely.
So, yeah, my brother, I ended up doing a number of matches with him in Europe. He would have, whenever Arnie's other assistant is a teacher, or is a teacher. And so there were certain times where he wasn't able to fulfill an appointment in Europe. So then quite often David was drafted in on merit because he was one of the top guys. And that was just brilliant. You know, the two of us going out and, you know, growing up together, obviously, and not only brothers, we were very close brothers. So to see that there happen, or to see that there at the time, that's one thing I'm going to miss, and I know I'll never get back again.
No. But it's brilliant that you've got that. No one could ever take that away from you. Has there ever been any brothers that's worked together on the European scene as match officials?
Not that I'm aware of. I know, did Andy and Bobby Madley maybe? I'm not sure. I know no, maybe not. I can't think of it. I know we done an interview with Dutch referee a number of years ago, and at that time he was actually trying to find out whether there wasn't. I don't think he could.
Yeah, was that Dick Yall? Was it Dick Yall? Did Dick Yall have a brother? Dick Yall, the Dutch referee? Was he one of them? I'm not sure if Bobby and Andy did anything. I think Bobby was on there before Andy and then moved up. And then Andy moved up. I'm not sure if they were actually on the same game. Like that's Europe-wise. We look into that. That'd be really interesting to know if there's ever been any brothers at FIFA level in any way, shape, or form, or sisters.
Fortunately, he stopped refereeing now completely, David.
Has he?
Yeah, he was unfortunate enough. He came off the list this year, and he's just decided he's got his partner. Unfortunately, has just been diagnosed with MS at such a young age. So he's felt now, you know, she sacrificed so much for him leading up to it. So he felt it was time now. He enjoyed his journey, and he's time to just walk away for him. And he's only, 28, 29 years of age. So, but he had a fantastic journey as well. So,
at the time, was it a really good thing for you to have him not only on the domestic league but also working internationally with him? Did it help you think where you were pushing each other with the competition that you had to see who could kind of do the best job?
Absolutely, it was always healthy competition between me and David. There was never any, and I can hand on heart say, there was never any jealousy between me and him. In fact, if anything, I would prefer to see him getting, and that's the truth. And I think he would probably say the same, getting a bigger appointment than me. But yeah, it was very healthy competition, but it was good because, yeah, you're always going to trust your colleagues. You're always going to trust your colleagues, especially if you're working together a long time. But your brother, you know that's pure trust. That's 100%.
Yeah.
No, you know, so you know. if God forbid something happened, or you would be there to help each other out. Or not only out there, if things didn't go to plan in a match or something, it was great to have that brother on the phone to say, look, I'm on a bit of a downer here, and he would always say something to me to bring me up, and vice versa. When
you weren't together, he was always the first one you'd ring on the way back after a game.
Absolutely. And quite often enough we weren't together, especially like when we were going well in terms of Arnie's team. David was very young. He was only literally, I don't think he was on the list when we were actually pushing on at that stage. So there's quite often enough, David was working with maybe the potential new FIFA referee, and we were the more experienced team. Yeah. So there was quite often when we were going different games, we're actually living together right up until obviously we're both the partners and moved in together. Mm-hmm. And he could have been going one end of the country for a match, and I could have been going to another end of the country.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
And also, because you're the older brother, if someone sits up on a game, you can blame him like you do as a kid. If I broke anything, just blame it on the younger one. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's very handy. I think that should be recognised. Blame the younger one.
All day long.
See, I was going to say, big picture, brilliant to have someone you can confide in to that degree. But on the smaller scale, like if my mum asked us both for help, and I'm the only one that turned up to like lift some heavy stuff, and he didn't because he had something else going on, I'd be fuming. Next time I saw him, it might be casual, but you two would might be out on the line on Europe, and you're like, listen, dickhead, I know you wasn't doing anything else that day. You definitely could have helped.
Bench guys with these knobheads. I'm going over there for the rest.
Yeah, you've got benches.
Listen, before we wrap up, mate, and this has been really, really good insight. The games at Lazio, Villarreal. We mentioned the Ireland-England game. Lazio, for God's sake, what was it like doing them?
Lazio was a very good game. It was against a team in Russia that I can't remember the name of. That's really bad. But I actually had a disallow a goal against Lazio in the very last minute of the match that would have won the game for them.
Oh, really?
Yeah, for offside. So coming in, Italian teams in particular had a lot of entourage with them, like a lot of them, like 10 times more than anybody else. And coming in, I was the one going into the tunnel, obviously. I was a senior assistant, so I was in at the tunnel. I got swamped. And thankfully, at that moment, inside the tunnel, there was a big screen. And this was after the match. Thankfully, just at that moment, the replay was being shown. And I says, guys, please take a look. And thankfully, I got it right. Everything was so. That was a really good moment, because in big games like that, there when you have to make big decisions, you are confident, but you're only human. There's always a wee thing in the back of your mind going, "Oh, what if?" Mm. And more often than not, you're right, but the odd time you might be wrong. But that can make you stronger. But that moment, obviously coming in, you're thinking Lazio, big Italian club, like we referee from Northern Ireland. All these things going through my head. They're going to blame me. Have I ruined this for us as a team? And you're only human. But thankfully I was right. But we went back to the hotel that night, and it was very late. A lot of them games kick off in the Europa League at maybe 9, 10 o'clock at night. So by the time you get back to the hotel, it could be 12, 1 o'clock in the morning. But they still insist that you have a meal, because everywhere you go, you're treated well. So we had a meal in the hotel, like crazy o'clock in the morning. And we always had a tradition. After the meal, no matter what time it was at night, we would go down to one person's room in the hotel and have one beer before we travel home, just to have a wee chin wag privately. So we were making our way down the hallway in the hotel, and this guy jumped out of the door of a room in his briefs and his vest and a wee guy with glasses, and he says, "I'm such and such Italian media. Can I have an interview?" And this was at 3 o'clock in the morning. And Arnie was a wee bit taken back, but he was nearly, from where I was seeing, I was thinking that he was nearly going to go, "Yeah, what do you want to know?"
Yeah.
And I'm going, "Come on, you." I more or less, we all more or less said, "Look, we can't speak to media," and straight down to the room. But like wee things like that prop into your mind too. But Lazio was fantastic. Villarreal, like our first. We get word that we're going to do our first Europa League game. And that's what we were striving towards at that time, to get into the groups. because that's where they want to be. It's first of all Europa League and Champions League. But when we found out we were getting an appointment, it's the same at any level. You always look at the games and go, wonder what game we'll get. When you find out, because the way it works in Europe is you find out you have a match in the Europa League, but you don't get told where you're going until you get your flights, maybe 3 or 4 days beforehand. So that was maybe 2 weeks, two weeks before the Europa League game. So we were studying these games. Where could it be? Villarreal was one game we thought not a chance. No, it was one of the Spanish La Liga team. First game, they're not going to send us there. We were looking at the smaller clubs, thinking, when we found out we were going to Villarreal, we were like, this is.
And it was at the Madrigal?
It was at the Madrigal, yeah. Oh. And it was fantastic. And thankfully the game went really smoothly for us for a first game in the Europa League. Everything went really well, but it was just the whole. Your friends asking you where you're going, or going out to do Villarreal. What? Because at that stage, we had done a number of big games, but nothing at that level. That was probably our first big one. And that was the start of the journey for a couple of years. And unfortunately, it was, wish I had it went on longer, but in saying that, can't complain because we've done some fantastic matches.
We talked about the great grounds. What was the greatest city that you visited?
Liverpool, obviously. You must have gone to Liverpool.
Do you know what? I really like Liverpool as a city, but it's a shame about the football team.
Oh, well, that's the end of the podcast. Thanks very much.
I'm sorry. We've got his brother on next. We're going to get rid of him.
Yeah.
His brother's a slag him off.
No, I really do like Liverpool as a city. It's a lovely city. So it is. No, cities, I've been to a lot of nice places. Athens. Surprisingly, I say Athens because that's where probably all went wrong for us in a game that finished it for us. But Athens as a city is beautiful. Where else? Moscow, beautiful city. And you know what? Lovely people. Lovely. Anywhere you go, anywhere we went, we were Kazakhstan. There was a place in Kazakhstan called Pavlodar, and it was out of this world. I always had an ambition to referee outside of Europe. Now, up until that point, I hadn't, but I counted that country because another part of Europe, but
it's almost Asia. Almost.
Most of it was Asia. But then thankfully I got the opportunity after that to go to Saudi Arabia. But no, Pavlodar was a city, Athens was a city that I really enjoyed. Bordeaux was lovely. But there's so many.
You get the obligatory photo in Red Square?
Yeah, I did. Wow. That's fantastic. It's a crazy spot.
Anyone else here who wants to get into refereeing and you see the journey, and we as a charity, as Ref Support UK, we want to flash up that there's referee abuse out there, there's referee assault out there. That's important to us so people can realise and prepare them for what might happen. But we'll always say there's some amazing opportunities being a match official, being a referee, being assistant referee, or lino as we like to call it. And it's just that we'll always be outweighed the bad by the good experience like this. And I think you've shown that. You've shown some great insights, some wonderful, passionate insights to it. Achieved some amazing things, not only for yourself, but for the North of Islands. With your brother, absolutely incredible. And now you're moving on to refereeing in the South. And I am sure the boys will join us in. We wish you all the best in that, mate. And this has been a cracker insight into you. And just carry on using that black whistle. And I'm sure you go from strength to strength.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Really enjoyed it, Richard. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks, Bitch.
Thank you very much. Cheers for sharing your stories, and see you all on the next episode of Referees, the Final Whistle podcast.